Seeking English, S.A.T. Workbook, page 328, problem 4. Murray fertilized his farm using 1/4 of his fertilizer on his alfalfa and 1/3 of his fertilizer on his wheat. If he still had 800 pounds of fertilizer remaining when he finished, how many pounds of fertilizer did he start with? As always, I need to stress chronology. I'm going to try to not adjust it again. I need to stress the chronology. The chronology is not certain in this problem in terms of whether he used the 1/4 of the fertilizer first or the 1/3 of the fertilizer first. The order in which these events are described may or may not be consistent with what actually happened. I'm going to make the case, though, that this does not matter, and it matters that this does not matter. If that sounds weird, don't worry, I'm going to explain it. There are two ways to read this story. One is to treat it as unambiguously as it is actually written. The other one is to allow yourself to become confused. There's a problem later in the book that arguably is ambiguous enough to the point where you have to make a choice based on judgment between which of two ways to read it. This is not that problem. If it were that problem, it would be more like this. So when I get to making that video, I'm gonna reference this. I'm gonna try to remember to reference this problem again. Okay, but I digress. What we have here is two versions of the story. One in which he begins with F amount of fertilizer and ends with 800 pounds of fertilizer. Other one in which he begins with F amount of fertilizer and also ends with 800 pounds of fertilizer. So graphically, the beginning and ending of both stories is the same. What happens in the middle, though, determines what we think F is at the end of the story. Possible answers are in pounds of fertilizer, 1,520, 1,920, 2,240, 2,400. Okay, so what could go wrong? This is what could go wrong. If it were as ambiguous as that other problem is, again, you'd have to choose between these, and I would tell you, when in doubt, choose the more complex version of events. In this case, you should not be in doubt. If you read the thing correctly, it does not really necessarily tell you in what order he uses the amounts of fertilizer, but it does actually tell you what amounts of fertilizer he uses, strictly in terms of reference to the amount with which he begins. Murray uses 1/4 of the amount of fertilizer with which he begins. So this is the amount he starts with. You can subtract this much from his supply, which is 1/4 of that supply. In this version, he uses an additional 1/3 of that same original supply. And if you read this carefully, it's my position that this is the story that is actually told to you in the book. The other version is misunderstanding the thing. Please don't misunderstand it. This is how you might misunderstand it. Is that he uses 1/4 of the fertilizer, and then he uses 1/3 of the remaining fertilizer. You'll notice if you read this carefully, it does not use the word remaining in that place. It uses it later. The word remaining fertilizer, the words remaining fertilizer don't pertain to this step in the process. They pertain only to the end. So he does not, this is the remaining fertilizer, so 1/3 of that is this. That's not the story that we're told here. So, first thing I want to do is get that off the board, okay? This is the wrong story. This is the correct story. If you're still confused, as always, watch this video again. This is an important thing to understand because if you get a similar problem wrong on the test, not only will you get the wrong answer, you will be wasting time and energy that you do not want to waste. You need that time and energy for other questions, other problems. Okay, doing this right not only gets you this point, it gets you closer to those other points that come later. Excuse me. So that is gone. From there, here's the fussy part where when I'm focused on making a video, things don't go as smoothly as they should. But in this case, you can condense this by producing a common denominator between these f's. The invisible denominator, as always, is f over 1, and I've mentioned there's an infinite number of these invisible denominators underneath them all the way down. Turtles all the way down. Okay? So it's f over 1 there. Common denominator between 3, 4, and 1 is going to be 12. Okay? So that becomes 12F over 12. Okay, that becomes 3F over 12. That becomes 4F over 12. You can reduce these negatives, this 3F and this 4F, they're both negative. Okay, don't flip the negative. It's actually two negatives. So, okay, 7F over 12 there. 12F over 12 minus 7F over 12 equals 5F over 12. Okay. There. Okay. From here, invisible denominator operates again. 800 over 1. You can move the 5 down here and move the 12 up here. Okay? There we go. F becomes 800 times 12 over 5. And it's going to become 160, right? Times 12. And from there, you probably want to use your calculator. Let's look at these answers, though. Oh, they all end in 0. That's not great. Okay. My intuition is that 2 and that 6 are going to produce a 2, 0. And 2 of your answers are 2, 0. So that narrows it down a little bit. Calculator time, or I can do it like this. Old school. Okay. There. Okay. That's 10 times 160. And that is 320. 1920 is answer B. Okay. So again, you can use a calculator for this. I don't like to pop the calculator on the screen if I can do it like I'm back in junior high. Okay. There you go. So again, how to use your calculator, how to do it without a calculator, not important on this problem. This is getting to be a long video, but what I do want to stress is this. Tell yourself the correct story. I know I said that in the first video. Follow the chronology and make sure that you tell yourself the correct story. Figure out where you begin, figure out where you end, get them into logical graphic positions in front of you. Okay? If you don't do that, and I know I said this, you will not only get the problem wrong, you will lose time and energy, and so it can cost you more than one problem.